Trump and Putin hold press conference after meeting in Alaska. What to know about the Trump-Putin meeting today? 1. President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin are holding a press conference in Alaska after their high-stakes meeting over ending the war in Ukraine. 2. The two leaders met alongside top aides for nearly 3 hours at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson in Anchorage, after a carefully choreographed welcome that included a red carpet and military flyover. 3. Mr. Trump said he wanted to leave the meeting with an agreement on a ceasefire in Ukraine, which Russia invaded in 2022. 4. CBS News 24/7 has live coverage of the press conference and summit from Anchorage, which you can watch in the player above. First Trump-Putin meeting lasted nearly 3 hours. The first meeting of the summit lasted nearly 3 hours. The meeting with the leaders and two key aides on both sides got underway at about 11:30 a.m. local time, and the Kremlin said it ended at about 2:15 p.m. The meeting was supposed to be followed by an expanded lunch session with more officials, but Mr. Trump and Putin appear to be moving ahead with their press conference. It's unclear whether the lunch has been scrapped, or if talks will continue after hearing from the presidents. Kremlin says first meeting has ended and press conference will begin soon. The Kremlin said the first meeting between the two leaders has ended, and the press conference with both Mr. Trump and Putin will begin shortly. Media told to gather in press conference room. Members of the White House pool, the media traveling with the president, have been told to gather in the room set up for the Trump-Putin press conference. Cameras showed a flurry of activity in the room, where two lecterns are on a stage in front of a backdrop with the slogan, "Pursuing Peace." Trump-Putin meeting ongoing after 2 hours. The two sides have now been behind closed doors for 2 hours. The wider lunch meeting has not yet started, according to Dan Scavino, a Trump aide. Trump-Putin flyover included B-2 bomber and 4 F-35s. The military flyover as Mr. Trump and Putin arrived included 4 F-35s, based out of Eielson Air Force Base in Alaska, and a B-2 from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, a U.S. official tells CBS News. There were F-22s from the 3rd Wing at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson, and a second B-2 on the tarmac when the leaders arrived, this official said. B-2 bombers were used in the U.S. strikes on Iranian nuclear sites in June, when they flew from their base in Missouri to Iran to carry out what officials said was the largest B-2 operational strike in U.S. history. Hillary Clinton says she'd nominate Trump for Nobel Peace Prize if he ends Ukraine war without giving territory to Russia. Hillary Clinton, the former Secretary of State and Mr. Trump's former rival on the campaign trail, said in a podcast appearance Friday that if Mr. Trump can secure an end to the war in Ukraine without ceding territory to Russia, she would nominate him for the Nobel Peace Prize herself. Clinton made the comments on the podcast Raging Moderates with Jessica Tarlov. Honestly, if he could bring about the end to this terrible war, where Putin is the aggressor, invading a neighbor country trying to change the borders, if he could end it without putting Ukraine in a position where it had to concede its territory to the aggressor, had to, in a way, validate Putin's vision of Greater Russia, but instead could really stand up to Putin, something we haven't seen, but maybe this is the opportunity, Clinton said. She added that this must mean a ceasefire, and Russia withdrawing over time from the territory it seized. If we could pull that off, if President Trump were the architect of that, I'd nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize, because my goal here is to not allow capitulation to Putin, aided and abetted by the United States. Clinton added, I'm dreaming that for whatever combination of reasons, including the elusive Nobel Peace Prize, President Trump may actually stand up to Putin on behalf of not just Ukraine and its democracy, and its very brave people, but frankly, on behalf of our own security and interests. Mr. Trump, whose supporters chanted "lock her up" about Clinton during the 2016 presidential election, told Fox News, Brett Baier, it was very nice of Clinton to say that, and I might have to start liking her again. Sullivan, ex-ambassador to Russia, says welcome for Putin was worthy of an ally. John Sullivan, former U.S. ambassador to Russia and a CBS News contributor, Mr. Trump's greeting of Putin, including the red carpet and military flyover, was an extraordinary scene. The way this was scripted, with the two presidential aircraft arriving, the red carpet, President Putin riding in President Trump's limousine, that surprised me, Sullivan said. It's a level of respect that the American president is showing to the Russian president. It struck me as an arrival that would be worthy of an ally, instead of a country and a Russian president that considers the United States its enemy, or at best its adversary. Sullivan acknowledged that Mr. Trump may be trying to flatter Putin as a negotiating tactic. I think what President Trump would say in response to what I just said is, look, I want to make an impression on Putin. I want to get results for the United States. Well, of course I'm going to treat him this way. You criticize me because other leaders try to flatter me. Well, I'm flattering Putin because I want something from him, which is peace in Ukraine, Sullivan said. How long will the Trump-Putin meeting last? The length of the talks will likely depend on how the meetings play out, and how much progress the two sides make on the lengthy list of agenda items before them. A Kremlin spokesman predicted earlier in the day that the talks could take 6 or 7 hours. The current bilateral meeting is expected to be followed by a lunch meeting that will include more officials, including Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and Chief of Staff Susie Wiles. The joint press conference with Mr. Trump and Putin is expected after that expanded meeting. The official White House schedule said the president was slated to leave Alaska at 5:45 p.m. local time, or 9:45 p.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time. In that scenario, he would return to the White House at about 4:30 a.m. Trump and Putin begin bilateral meeting, declining to take questions. In a chaotic moment, reporters were rushed into and out of a room where Mr. Trump and Putin were beginning their bilateral meeting alongside top aides. Again, Putin declined to answer reporters' questions, including, will you agree to a ceasefire, and will you commit to not killing any more civilians? Putin is very rarely subject to questions from foreign reporters. Mr. Trump also declined to take questions. Rubio, Witkoff and a translator were seated alongside Mr. Trump, while Russian Foreign Affairs Minister Sergei Lavrov, Foreign Policy Advisor Yuri Ushakova and a translator were seated alongside Putin. Former U.S. Ambassador to Russia details extraordinary stagecraft of Trump-Putin meeting. Speaking on the CBS News special report, as Mr. Trump and Putin got into the presidential limo, former U.S. Ambassador to Russia and CBS News contributor John Sullivan compared the arrival ceremony with the last time Putin met with a U.S. president. I contrast it with the last meeting that Putin had with an American president, with President Biden in Geneva 4 years ago. The two presidents arrived at a home in Geneva, they shook hands on the front steps, and went into a meeting with their Secretary of State and Russian Foreign Minister, Sullivan said. Sullivan was the ambassador in Moscow from 2020 to 2022. It was nothing like this spectacular scenery, with planes arriving, fighter jets flying overhead and the two presidents riding together in the limousine of the President of the United States. He continued, this really is an extraordinary stagecraft that the United States has put together for President Putin. Sullivan noted that other presidents have met with Russian and Soviet leaders on their own, highlighting Ronald Reagan's meetings with Mikhail Gorbachev. He said Putin's English is proficient enough for him to be able to talk to Mr. Trump without an interpreter. Putin's English is much better than he lets on. He's not as fluent in English as he is in German. He can converse with the German Chancellor in flawless German, Sullivan said. His English isn't quite as good, but he could have a conversation with the president in English that President Trump would understand. Trump and Putin greet each other, shaking hands on the tarmac ahead of talks. In a carefully choreographed moment, Mr. Trump descended the steps of Air Force One moments before Putin came down the steps of his plane, stepping onto U.S. soil for the first time in about a decade. Both Mr. Trump and Putin walked down their respective red carpets, with Mr. Trump waiting for Putin at the end and clapping. Both Mr. Trump and Putin extended their hands and shook, patting each other on the arm and exchanging words as they smiled. The two ascended the platform in front of the fighter jets where they shook hands again. Neither Mr. Trump nor Putin answered shouted questions from reporters. A B-2 stealth bomber and several other fighter jets flew overhead. In an unusual moment, Putin joined Mr. Trump in his presidential limo, known as the Beast, with seemingly no aides or interpreters with them. Putin smiled as the vehicle began to drive away. Ukraine supporters rally near Trump-Putin meeting site. A small crowd of supporters gathered in Anchorage for a rally in solidarity with Ukraine ahead of the meeting between President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Demonstrators waved blue and yellow Ukrainian flags and held signs saying "Support Ukraine" and "No compromise." Trump, "I won't be happy if I walk away without some form of a ceasefire." In his interview with Fox News anchor Bret Baier on Air Force One, Mr. Trump said he is looking to come away from the meeting with an agreement to end the fighting in Ukraine. "I won't be happy if I walk away without some form of a ceasefire," he said. "I say this and I've said it from the beginning. This is really setting the table today. We are going to have another meeting if things work out, which will be very soon. Or we are not going to have any more meetings at all," maybe ever. Subscribe, like, share and see you next videos.